Well, welcome to another edition of My Harlow My Life, and I'm really pleased, as everybody can see, to my right, maybe to your left, depending on how you're looking at it on the screen. Of course, he's the one and only Mr. Christian Wheeler. So, welcome, Christian.
Welcome. Didn't know whether I was going on like Star Wars right there.
But Christian, I suppose how we did start with these. But I mean, around lockdown now. But how did you survive lockdown?
Probably like everyone else, peaks and troughs. I'm lucky that I've worked from home for about 7.5 years now, so I'm used to being at home, home office, and being around the house. I suppose at the start it was great, family time, out exercising on the bikes, lots of walks. I think as maybe time went on, I found it a little bit difficult. Not getting out, watching football. Not going over the Orient, or I'm pretty fairly lucky with work that once every couple of weeks, or once a month I'm normally travelling abroad for work. I think over the last few years, normally between 50 and 70 business flights a year to all parts of the world for work. So that's been quite tough. I know my wife's liked me being around a bit more, doing a bit more of the parent stuff, but yeah, I think it's been tough on a lot of people. So I'd say I've probably fairly survived it okay. I think it's been better of late, obviously, like yourself, probably getting out to watch a few non-league games, and I think that's good for people's mental health. But I took it very seriously at the start. Obviously, got kids, older parents, and now I'm kind of under the impression that we kind of all still we really need to sort of get the country moving again and get the economy moving, and obviously with precautions. But I think as a country and people's well-being and health could be in a bit of a dire place if we don't start getting a few things in motion, I think.
So I mean, Christian, away from that then, so I mean, Harlow-wise, I mean, when did you first sort of come to Harlow? So plan-wise first. I mean, when was the?
I actually joined as a kid.
Right.
So I spent my first 4 years playing. I think started at under 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s at Harlow Town. Group of us Harlow boys playing for Harlow Town, and loved it there. Had a great team. I think we only lost one game in 4 years. Done a double every year, and it was great. Doing quite well personally, and I was at a pro club at the time, and they wanted to sign me and Greg Pike, two Harlow boys, again for another year. We're both at Norwich, but they stipulated that we needed to get out of the Harlow Rec League and away from Silverdraft and join another team for a bit more stiffer competition. So I think Pikey he might have gone to Spartak and played the year up, and most of our district team played under Dave Geiss at the Sports Centre. So I joined the Sports Centre. So we used to get changed in the facilities at the old Sports Centre, or in the cricket portion of that changing room, and we'd play at the back and play our bigger games on the pitch. But it's really from there, I think, under 13s, joined Harlow Sports Centre, and then played all the way through really till leaving school, and loved it. Great club. Had affiliation with obviously the senior team. BritSec Security sponsored us, and we had a great side there, and I loved it. I loved as a kid going to watch Harlow. As I say, I actually had to look up some dates early of some games that I can still remember now, and I used to go over there with my old man and my mates and some of the boys from the team, and then obviously you get to an age where you're allowed to go over there on your own, and I don't know, it always had, even though it was, my friends, even though it was a bit of a shit, it had a certain aura to it, the Sports Centre. I think as a kid, like at Silvo, you played your cup finals there, and you looked at it as like this big stadium, and I just enjoyed going over there. I always remember I looked up the date earlier, and it was like the 1990 FA Cup game against Barnet. I used to go and watch a lot of sort of lower league London teams as a kid, or Barnet. and to add them at the sports centre, there was a couple of fouls in there. We lost, but I can always remember that game. And I can always remember going away to Peterborough as a kid with my mates and the parents and getting smashed 7-0 in the FA Cup. But just from an early age, just going over and being involved in the football club was always something that, I really enjoyed. So, yeah, pretty much from, I think, 12 was my attachment with the team.
Mm. Well, I spoke to the Oracle, Mr. Tewson, and he said to me, this is what he sent me back. He couldn't get all your facts and figures because he was on his way up, but he came back to me and he said, I believe Christian first played during the 97-98 season under Eddie McCluskey.
That's it. So I got so the year before I got released by Barnet. That's where I first met Tom, and I got released I think a month before the season finished, and they had a lot of young local boys playing in the resis at the time. So Dave Lee used to run the resis, and he was like, "Look, come and just have get your face known around the club, and then next year you go in with Eddie in the first team." So I kind of done that. And really struggled to adapt to men's football. I thought, this is really not for me. 17, 18 as a year old, playing up against men that were just smashing the life out of you, and I just thought, this is not for me. But I stuck with it. Went back. As I say, that year was the 97, 98. It was the year I think we was in Ryman 3, and we got promoted that year. I can remember that. I just remember going into the football club as a kid and a lot of.
Sorry, mate. Somebody tried to phone me. Go on.
There was a lot of big characters around the club. Your Lee Carriages, Neil Moore, Smudger, Samo, David Howes, Nicky Ironson. People that had been around. Pro football and non-league football a long time, and it was good as a young lad to go into that changing room and sort of be around that. I always say that first year was my favourite, probably my favourite game of football that I was ever involved with. I can still remember it now. We was away to Clapton, which was always a real shit tip in Ryman 3. I think it was then. It was 4-0 down at half time. And we come back and won 5-4. And I remember actually scoring in that game. Pikey scored, Samo scored. I remember Neil Smith. I'm sure he scored the winner to win 5-4. And I just remember, even then, you had that loyal group of supporters that went everywhere, going absolutely mental. I can't remember where we came. I think we came third or second, but we got promoted. And then, we actually went up. We went up the year after that as well, 98 to 99. We went up the second year, and I played up until November, and then during my time after getting released by Barnet, I was playing at Harlow, earning obviously a little bit of pocket money, working locally, really trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I met my old mule manager in Staple Tyre, a random meeting, and his friend had just taken over a club in Australia. And so I played for Harlow till about October, and then 1st of November I went to Australia for 2 years and played in the Super League in Australia.
What was that like?
What's that?
What was that like?
I always say that it was like the sort of making of me as a person. I remember sitting on a plane and thinking, I'm not very self-sufficient at anything really. I can't really cook, I can't really clean, I can't really do a lot. And at probably, 19 years of age, it was probably a daunting task. But I spent the first couple of months travelling around Australia watching the 98-99 Ashes tour, which was great. One of my favourite memories in life. And then reported for pre-season training on I think it was the 1st of February that year, so 99, and I really struggled in regards to, I'd been having a good time, probably drinking and smoking and enjoying myself far too much for 2 or 3 months, and then I was, sort of on my own, and just the other side of the world, missing family and friends. And when I left, I remember everyone saying, "Oh, you'll be home in 3 months, you'll be home in 6 months." So I was like, "Right, I've got to long this out and prove people wrong." And then once pre-season really got underway, I kind of realised that I had 20 or 30 new mates, and it was an amazing experience. I went for a season and ended up staying, just about 2 years. Played in the Super League, played against some real top players at the time. I don't know, Ian Crook, he's a Harlow boy. The old Spurs player, Norwich, he was there. Nicola Bay, who won the World Cup with Italy, he was there. Slater, people like that. I played for a team called Man United, and played then centre half with the now Australian manager Graham Arnold. So it was good, and it was just good, I think, for life skills, really, to just go away and do that away from away from your family and friends. And it really sort of gave me my love back of football. I think most kids that go through academies and have that serious football from a young age, I kind of got to 18 when I got released, and I didn't really love. It wasn't really the game that I'd fallen in love with as a kid in the garden, I suppose. It was more, you look at it like anything. You look at it, maybe is it going to be a job? Is it, does it restrict you having fun with your family and friends? Do you rebel against that a little bit? And it kind of puts you off. I can't say I play for the best youth team coaches when I should be knuckling down when you're a young professional or trying to become a professional footballer, but it gave me a love for the game that was good for me at that time, and it allowed me to see parts of the world that I don't think I would ever have done if it weren't for football, really.
Those reunions will be good though, won't they?
It's funny, that is one thing that COVID really killed. So I was there in '98 for 2 years, and then I was actually playing for Tom. Fast forward a few years, in 2005 and 2006, and the same coaching team had just taken over another Super League team in Brisbane, and they were peppering me about going back and getting another year and just having one last fling at it. And I was like, well, a bit older now, and I was quite happy at work. And then literally within 2 weeks, I worked at Citibank at the time. The department I was at sold to another bank, and I was like, "Well, sod it." So I told Tom that I was leaving, and I went back to Australia in 2006 and played there for another year to 2007, and I hadn't been back since. And we planned a months long trip at Easter this year, around the kids having a couple of weeks off, and then a week either side to go back and see people, and go back to Brisbane and go back to Sydney. And unfortunately, that was one of the first things that fell foul of COVID. So it's another year, really. I don't know when we'll get back now. I don't know. My sister actually emigrated to Brisbane, so it was kind of tied in with that. My sister moved to Brisbane a couple of weeks after my boy was born, and we've kind of been putting it off each year for the kids to be a little bit older to deal with the flight and stuff. And as I say, this year was going to be the year, and unfortunately we kind of lost out, but it is what it is.
So football-wise, then, I mean, after that sort of going back to Australia and that, when you came back to England again, I mean, how long after that was it that maybe you came in and moved on with Chapo? Did you come in as a manager as well? Did you have more playing time first?
So first of all, the first time I went to come back was, I think, trying to think when that was. I think it was for the 09-010 season. I just won the league at Aveley. We beat East Thurrock on the last day of the season. And getting a bit older, I was thinking about, what to do, what I should do. And Glenn Adapezi called me and said that he was putting together a decent side at Harlow and to be his captain at Harlow, and they were going to have a real go. I think they'd just been relegated out of the Prem back into Ryman North, and he put together a really, really good side, and we was beating a lot of Ryman Prem and Conference South teams pre-season, and then literally just before the season started, that was like the years of the power struggle, I'd say. So the guy that was chairman then, I don't think could buy all the club off the existing owners, and he sort of walked away, literally on the verge of literally a week before the season started. So spoke to a few clubs, ended up at Tilbury. There was a Harlow contingent at Tilbury, and then played there for a year, and then come back, I think, for the 10 and 11 season. And was a phone me and just said, look, I want you to, him and Chapo had gone back the season before when it was all a bit of a mess. Obviously, I think they was expecting to go down to the Senior League, and then obviously Tom had come in, they'd got a reprieve, and they was going to try and get some lads together to stabilise it and push them from there. And that was 10 to 11 maybe. Chapo had come back to play the previous year, and had been there. So I was manager, Chapo was assistant, I was player coach. Probably started playing for the first couple of months, and obviously there was a change in management. Kev sort of stepped away. Chapo became manager, and then I went up to assistant, and it was at that point I think when you go into management, you have to detach yourself from being one of the boys. As much as I always enjoyed being one of the boys, and that's probably the one thing that I missed about football now, is like the changing room and being around boys, and especially back when I played, not looking at it through rose tinted glasses, but I think when I played was a good time to play football, rather than I look at some of the kids now that play, but I wanted to detach myself and do it properly, and so I more or less stepped away from playing, and I was assistant manager, and we'd name myself on the bench, and I'd play if we had to, but I kind of found it difficult to sort of play and worry about everyone else and do myself justice as well. So I just remember at the time saying, I don't mind being assistant manager, but I'll play for the Resis on a Wednesday night and take the Resis as well when we was playing in the Capital League or whatever it was in. I said, but I'll keep myself fit, but if I'm going to be part of the management team, you kind of have to detach yourself. I think good managers detach themselves. You're part of the group and you're trusted by the players, but there's also that divide there, and I think you need that divide to whether it's discipline or whatever it may be. I think a lot to be said with detaching yourself from being one of the boys. So I chose to do that, 10-11, and then that was the year we had a right go. Unfortunately, we lost to Wingate in the playoffs. Amazing night, really. I've never seen so many Harlow supporters there behind the goal. Fireworks and pyro and singing, and it was just. I think I can't remember if it was 2-0 down and we brought it back to 2. I can't remember. I just remember it being. It was even, and it was one of them nights where it would go in. We absolutely battered them, and they sort of managed to ride it out. And then we kind of fell apart in extra time and went out, and it was a real shame, really, because we had a lot of what I'd call experienced boys, in a nice mix of Ryman North boys and then players that had been up and down the pyramid. We brought Brownie in. Obviously, I know you interviewed Brownie before. Brownie's such a not only is he a top player, but he's just such a great lad to have around. And he also had that. I like players with a bit of fire in the belly. I think that's one of the things that I see missing in the game now. There's not enough boys that have got fire in the belly. If I look at myself, I didn't really like training. I didn't really like running on a Tuesday night or Thursday night. But I'd like to think, come 7:45 on a Wednesday or 3 o'clock on a Saturday, you kind of left it all out there, and Brownie was kind of he epitomised that, and you had him and players like Belly and good, Fergie, good players. And
would you say that? Sorry, Chris. Would you say though that players like the likes of Brownie and maybe Popey as well? Those type of players, you don't see that many of them these days now.
No, like I've kind of bullied my son to support Leighton Orient, and he's got a Harlow kit, got a Harlow scarf, like Harlow's his non-league team, but I've kind of done that because it's real football. I watch it because during COVID there weren't much on, but I've probably watched more Prem football in the last 6 months than I've watched in the last 6 years, purely simply because you just can't relate to that anymore. I can't, it's like it's the same with Harlow. Harlow's our class is, I'm born and bred in Harlow. Harlow's a working class town that want to see players put it in and leave it out there. And going back to Brownie, that's why he was liked so much. He's a great character in the changing room and outside of that, but he left everything out there, and you don't see that anymore. And look at the Spurs and United game at the weekend. Like I said to my son at the time, I said that's why we don't watch Prem football. I said that's why I don't take you to Prem football, because I can't stick that. People rolling around on the floor, and I take him to it because I see a lot of synergy behind. If you leave it out there, if you put it in, that's all right for me. If we lose and you've had a right go and you've given everything that you can do and you've given workmanlike, I can stick someone not being very good if they give me everything they've got. I can't stick people just strolling around taking their money and just kind of very easy OG. And I think Premiership football's a lot like that now. I don't think there's any affiliation to the working class person at all.
Well, I think you on that sort of note, what sums that up is this week, of course, is with the mascot down at Arsenal being made redundant, and then they go and pay £45 million out for a player on the same day, and it just doesn't make sense.
No, and again, that sums up modern day football. I would urge. I've always been a massive advocate of non-league football. As I said, I spent my formative years, going to watch, Bayern, going to watch, I spent a lot of games as a kid. My dad, I think finished his career at Wildstone. Used to go to Wildstone a lot. I'd always be at Harlow, Silverdraft, Stalford. And you've just got real football. You're closer to the players. There's, it has that local community feeling. I think Premiership football, they don't need fans there anymore. They don't. They've got the money from the TV rights. They've got the money from Sky. They sell that. They're not bothered about a 60-year-old man that's been coming for 25 years. Is still, doesn't wear a shirt. Has got the same scarf that he's had for 20 years. All they're interested in is, a tourist that comes over from, wherever it may be, spends 250 quid in the club shop, will stream all the games. It's just a revenue generator, and I don't think that you get that with non-league. I think there's a lot more warmth and feeling from that.
So with Harlow, what was what's the one, if you got one sort of main memory of a game that that you played in, and one that you were sort of managing in and stuff? What games, what sort of two games sort of stick out the most for you?
Yeah, playing in was definitely that Clapton game. As I say, I can remember being 4-0 down at half time, and I can remember coming back to win 5-4, and I always feel like my memory is pretty good, but I can still remember now. I'm sure. So you'd have to check with Phil, but I'm sure Smudger scored the winner, and I can just remember everyone diving in, the supporters behind the goal. So that was, as I say, that was that 97-98 promotion series. And then as a manager, that first year, or assistant manager, that first year, 2010-11, we went on a really good FA Trophy run, and we beat some good teams along the way. And I think we kind of fell short. I think we went out to Woking, conference side Woking at the time. I actually played right back in that. But there's lots of memories. As a kid, as I say, it was always, I don't know why I can remember, it was always losing to Barnet in the FA Cup at the Sports Centre. Lots of memories, lots of good memories. As I say, it's just, I think, I can't really pick out one other than that, really.
Can you tell us any funny stories from the dressing rooms and stuff with the lads that he's clean enough maybe to broadcast?
I don't know. Back in the Sports Centre, I remember the good old days at the Sports Centre. And let's just say there was a few late drinks in there that turned out a bit wonky. But no, stories you kind of have to keep them on the down low, don't you? Tom always used to make me laugh as a manager. Like I can always remember like joining back for Harlow, and so I think it was 2005-06 season, and he just used to shout your name like 100 times until you looked round. And he'd always do it like, I can still remember it now. Like he just used to shout across the running track at your name, and it didn't matter what. As soon as you turn around and put your hand up, he'd stop and he'd be alright, and it'd just be. Yeah, that's my one abiding memory of Tom, and just being a good bloke to have a beer with after. You see Tom as a very will to win, a character that gets worked up, but then step away from that. He's one of the best people that you could have a drink with and socialise with.
Do you, I mean, with the boss, I mean, sometimes gets sort of a bad rap and stuff like that. But do you see with Tom, that you sometimes you just wish that people would see what I've seen from him, what you've seen from him? Do you think is there sometimes you'd love to see him sort of, I don't know, show the fans, what he's really like, rather than sort of being the man like you just said that you see run up to the touchline and give him some welly and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think everyone's different when it comes to football. I think I didn't realise until I probably released, like as a up to 18-year-old been around full-time football, I was probably too nice, and it taught me to go dip your toe in and then go off to Australia, and you can come back and once you step over that white line, you can be the nicest bloke in the world when you're having a beer. When you step over that white line, you got to have a different persona and a different will to win. And I think Tom's probably like that. Probably people see the sort of rough edge of Tom, but away from the pitch and away from those 3 points, or I think when I come back, when I answered the call to Tom when I was in a real mess, I think the year 13, 14 was it, or 12, 13, when they had the 10-game ban, the 10-point deduction, and they was fighting to stay in the league, and I was after leaving Harlow, the assistant manager went to play for the Abbey, and I was probably there until the middle of March, and the only reason I came back was because of Tom. Tom phoned me and said, look, we're going to go down here. I'm trying to get a couple of boys to try and keep us up to Safe Football Club. And I've done that at the time because, as someone that went into management, he gave me a lot of foundations to build off. He's a good man. He's got great experience in the club, and I think at the time, I got a lot of stick for it. But I remember saying in the Harlow Star, the local press, Harlow was going one way before Tom took over. You know, like that year that Harlow fell apart and I went to play at Tilbury, like we pumped Harlow both games that year, and they were awful. And you know, the club was being run on a generator. The floodlights kept going off. You know, they had a team of like pub players. They were getting pumped by anyone. You know, no one wanted it. No one had put their money into it. You know, Tom took that on. You know, and if you look at the progression of the club over the last 20 years, you know, they were playing at a bird shit infested sports centre before Tom came along. You know, and the problem with Tom is, I think, because he's had that experience, he's been in full-time football. Sometimes there's that spiky edge to Tom, and sometimes I think people take that the wrong way. And I think sometimes if you sat him down and had an honest conversation, I think he'd have an honest conversation back with you. I think sometimes he probably gets a bit of unjust stick, and you know, his natural reaction would be, well, you know, fuck him, or you know, I'm not entertaining that abuse like you and I would in the street. You know, I've had a couple, you know, very minimal, but I've had a couple of run-ins with Harlow fans before, purely and simply because, you know, we had a couple of bad results and they didn't like it, or we was playing, you know, players that they didn't particularly like, and I would back them to the hill. You know, football's all about opinions, and people sometimes, you know, pay their money and want to voice those opinions. But the problem being is, no one's put more money into that football club than Tom, and sometimes I think there's a bit of lack of, I don't know, lack of sort of understanding that, you know, anyone who's got money, you wouldn't tell them to buy a football club. You might as well, whatever money you had, you might as well go and burn it. You know, people at non-league level or lower, you know, look at our owners at Leyton Orient. People are not buying football clubs at that level to make money. They're doing it because they love the club and, you know, they want to be involved. You know, I'm sure getting 200 fans over at Harlow is not making Tom any money. You know, and sometimes I think people forget that, and you know, it's hard. It's hard because, you know, people do pay their money and want to have an opinion, and I'd say the last couple of years haven't been great, but you know, as I say, for me, the club was only going one way before Tom came in. Obviously, there's probably good and bad sides to everything, and you know, I always suggested it'd be good to have a supporters meeting and an open air meeting, and you know, I think both sides at non-league football need to interact and be open, and yeah, I don't know much about the club at the moment. As I say, I'm quite happy to say, like, that, you know, I am going to call Tom today. I am going to try and get in contact with him and see what the state of play is, because you know, I haven't really missed not being involved. Like, I stopped playing at the Abbey. I played a couple of years at Vets, and that was it. I come out of it. I spent all my time. You know, I've actually enjoyed going over the Orient on a Saturday. It's probably the first time since I was 10 that playing football hasn't taken over my life, really. And I've had Saturday spare, and first time I've ever bought a season ticket, and I've gone home and away with my boy, probably Orient, the last 3 years, and I'll go midweek games in the week, you know, when I can around work. But with travel not being an issue at the moment, and me not being here, there, and everywhere, you know, I've gone to the last couple of Harlow games, and I said to you before, I've come away really frustrated. You know, I live in Leigh-on-Sea now. It's an hour's drive, and I drove home the other Tuesday, and I just felt really frustrated by it. That, you know, I don't really know what's going on in the club. You know, I don't really know if the manager's there anymore, if he's not there. But for me, the whole place just seemed like it needed a massive re-energizing and a massive re-engagement, because I'm biased, and as I say, I was one of them as a kid, but I've always thought that it does fluctuate. If they're doing well, it goes up, and obviously if they're not, it goes down. But I've always thought Harlow fans to be the best around, and when they're doing well, there's not a better place to be. They're vocal, they get behind the boys, their flags are out, they'll sing, they'll have a good time. I've been to the last couple of games, and I've just thought the whole place is just going through the motions. Like, the fans are there. I don't know whether it's because it's COVID, or it's just getting out, or it's part of their ritual, but they're there, and it's the same old faces. And I've not got a bad word to say about it, but it's like they're going through the motions, and they're going through the motions because the team look like they're going through the motions, and I just feel like, I think it might not be me, but like I went away last Tuesday, and I thought about it, and then I've seen another recent game, and even for me, like if I phone Tom today and say, "Have you got a manager?" No, I would put my hand in the ring, because over the space of 2 or 3 days, I wrote a massive plan of, every local lad playing at that level, all the best players in the Essex Senior League, all the best players that are around if the budget is tight. Putting together a backroom team that are all from the town. I feel like the whole place just needs to come together and re-energise. And as I say, I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know what's going on, but I just felt like everything was just going through the motions. And I touched on it earlier. Harlow's a working class town. I'm proud. When you grew up, people used to say, "Oh, you're from Harlow," and I always said, "Look, might not be the best place in the world, but it wasn't never the worst, and it was a good, honest town where people worked hard and enjoyed themselves." I haven't seen that when I've come to Harlow in the last couple of games, and you've got to put a team on a pitch that there's some attachment there. There's some local boys there. There's people that I don't mean this badly to anyone. Like, Harlow's not the only club like that. I feel there's a lot of football clubs at the moment where there isn't that attachment. I don't know if there is that care and that drive or what it was in our day. But I just come away the last few weeks pretty frustrated that it just didn't have that buzz about it that it normally does, and it just feel like I just need that spark.
So do you feel then it's almost a case of, and again, we don't know what the situation is. I don't know the situation any more than you. If there's a manager or not manager there, do you then feel then that that it needs to be a case of almost back to basics and a bit more, instead of getting that sort of almost like a Harlow, should we say Harlow Town sort of management team into there, so people, as you just said, start with people from the town and maybe the odd few Harlow-based players, and then add to that from there?
100%. As I say, part of my plan would be you go and look at all, and I've got a list, you go and look at all the players that are playing at the same level as Harlow, that live in Harlow. And there's between 20 or 30, I wouldn't say kids, but blokes playing at that level, so you're giving yourself a chance. You get your backroom staff that are from the town, the attachments there, their friends will come, their family will come. Local players, are cheaper. They haven't got to pay for travel. Everyone wants to pay for a Harlow. It's a bigger club. As I said, their family and friends are coming, so you're putting people on the gate. You work your contacts. Leighton Orient, Southend, Concord, all these people I spoke to in the last couple of days want to get their young players out playing. You just got to try and get some attachment there, because if the budget's tight and you're going through a tough period, you're more likely to stick with people that you've got an affiliation to, rather than boys from London or Kent or wherever it may be that are just coming to pick up their money and leaving. You know, I think the one thing I did try when I was assistant to Daniel coaching was to get local boys involved. Now, there was a stigma at the time about Harlow boys not getting a chance, but there was a lot of boys that I tried to get in, and some come, some didn't, some played in the capital team. But Harlow's a huge town, you know. I think we touched on it before, and I think, you know, Warren maybe mentioned it. The disparity now of where one is, where the other, but what's the difference between Harlow and Stevenage? There isn't. They're both new towns. They both, you know, you both call them quite working class towns with, you know, big affiliations to football. You know, one's kicked on and one hasn't. You know, I always feel like Harlow's spoken in the nearly term. It could be this, it could be that. Well, you've got to re-engage. You know, the thing that, you know, for me is get the local kids involved. You know, get every kid in the town, go into every school in the town, give them a free. You know, I used to say this to someone all the time. You know, go into the town, give every kid in the town a free season ticket. The adult that comes with them pays half price. Listen, you're not making any money out of that kid through the gate. But what you do is you generate an interest. You got a supporter for life, for one, because they'll keep coming back. And two, I know my kid. I can't get my kid out of the Orient Club shop. I can't. Dad, I want a burger. I want a hot dog. I want a cheeseburger. I want a pie. I want a Mars bar. I want a drink. You generate an interest and you generate an income. You got to think a little bit out of the box now, because whereas I think I remember Mickey being on and watching one of your shows before, like the sporting club. If you wanted a cheap beer as a kid, you used to go in the not as a kid, but I should say that. As an 18-year-old plus adult, if you wanted a cheap beer, you know, you'd go in a sporting club.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-minute walk from the town, and it was always packed.
So do you think now to come back to the thing about the tickets and season tickets will be, well, we've tried that and it didn't work, but see, for me, would that be not a case of we'll try again until it does work? Because you've lost nothing out of it in the end run, have you?
So listen, you don't get nothing for looking back, and two, you can't, you know, I don't know what you do for business. You can't do something once and it don't work and you just give up. You either change your approach or you've got to keep chipping away, and you've got to think out of the box, because that's not on anyone's doorstep really. Everyone's got to drive to get there. Everyone's got to put themselves out to go, and you got to think about what you can do to engage people. And I don't agree with someone saying, you know, we tried it once and it didn't work. You got to continually try, because it's not going to cost you anything. It's not like you're doing yourselves out of anything by trying, and I just think it's missing at the minute. I just think there's more I'd say dissatisfied football fans, Premier League football fans, London football fans, than there's ever been. You haven't got to reinvent the wheel. You've just got to make it so people can come and enjoy themselves. You know, I'm, as I say, born and bred in Harlow. Most of my friends either support Spurs, which they can't get a ticket to, or they support West Ham. Most of them have bought season tickets for the new gaff and never want to go back. Like, you know, and going back to Marco, I can remember Orient in the Barry Hearn days giving away. He gave away, I think he used to give away between 5,000 and 10,000 season tickets a year. Obviously, it was whatever it was, it's a different level, whatever, but whatever the number was, he used to give away these season tickets to local people every year, because the worry was that Orient's supporter age group bracket was very, very high, and there wasn't that young blood. Now, everyone would admit it, there's more young people watching later than I've ever seen. You know, you've got the old boys that still go, but you've got a real young, up and coming group of supporters that a lot of that goes back to her giving away season ticket holders. And I just think it doesn't hurt, it really doesn't hurt to sort of think outside the box, and even start doing it with, I don't know if they do it with youth team or what. I just remember back in the day I had lots of ideas to try and get that Harlow community involved, and as I say, both on the playing side and the spectating side, and I just think, as I say, it's always spoke about in the what if, and take a couple of steps back, and then they go forward, and it's a seesaw, and I think it's all about building momentum.
Yeah. I mean, you say that. I mean, I used to go down to Leighton Orient as a kid with my dad. And I've always been sort of one of my, I'm an Arsenal fan, but as well. But it's one of those things for me that, Orient's always one of those clubs that you so fondly, absolutely love, and and we're doing what I'm doing now as well. I've managed to talk to people like Peter Kitchen, which was just fantastic for me, because he was my idol at Leighton Orient with John Chidozie and all that, and it was just recently they bought that. The braces kit up, and that was the kit for me. That was the iconic kit of any kit ever. Was that kit, because I used to remember seeing them playing it, and and I had to wait, I don't know however many years, from 1978 all the way through till a few years ago, to see Arsenal played Leighton Orient in any type of game. Do you know what I mean? And that was probably one of the highlights of my football career. Was going to watch that at the Emirates to see them two play. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, I watched that. I can remember the first leg was great, but the second leg got absolutely filled in. I think Bentner got a hat trick. It was 5 or 6-0. But even that, like you've probably touched on a massive point there. Even kits, like, Harlow, why don't they, bring out a kit from the FA Cup run? As you say, you've mentioned you've mentioned the braces kit. It's the first kit I've bought. First shirt I've bought probably in 20 years, football shirt, because it's an iconic kit. I bought it for me and my son this year. Obviously, they had a lot of interest around, Harry Kane sponsoring that. But I think Orient are a great example of like sort of thinking out of the box, and it's on a different level, and everything's relative. But I just think Harlow's got massive, and still now massive potential. You look at the ground, you look at the setup, you look at the footfall that could come there. If you do them well, they're always come. It's just about building that momentum.
I mean, you look at it now, Christian, as well. With it, of course, you've got the ladies' side there doing miracles with what they're doing every year, and now they've even got the likes of all right. I know people would say, well, he's not necessarily famous, but you've got the likes of probably one of the most famous people from that Arsenal fan TV in DT. You've got his team down there as well playing at the arena as well. So there's that pool there now where you've got the ladies team doing extremely well on the Sundays. You've got DT's team down there on the days when Harlow are away, etc. Harlow itself. So there's a good pool in there, and a good sort of way of promoting the club with the three teams that are actually playing out there.
Yeah, exactly. I just, as I say, it just looked to me that it just seemed a bit like people were going through the motions. It's the first time I've ever done it. First time in football, I kind of stood behind a goal in the first half, and I kind of went and stood by the dugout in the second half just to monitor what was going on, and just seemed a lack of interest all round, and for me, that game, Waltham Abbey won it without getting out of second gear, and if you look at it, they're a prime example, Waltham Abbey. They've got 3, 4, maybe 5 Harlow boys playing in their team that I know of. They've also got a lot of local boys to Waltham Abbey that live in the town, and I think they've built good momentum. They've done their pitch up. They've got a young, enthusiastic management team over there. I hear good things about them and their enthusiasm, and Spencer's coaching and things like that. So I just think sometimes you've either got to take a gamble, or you've got to start doing some new things, because you know, things get stale, and you know, football gets stale. You know, I'm a great believer that it's great at the moment that all these young English managers are getting jobs. You know, and people say, oh, they're not being very successful. Well, you know, there's plenty of what I call steady lower league, you know, managers that are not successful either. But it's just the merry-go-round of just them keep getting jobs and the same ideas and the same players. And sometimes, you know, you've got to run with sort of the new generation to invoke that spark. And I think, you know, Harlow does need a spark. Whether, you know, as I say, I'm going to phone Tom and see what the crack is, because I don't know whether that's me or someone else, or, you know, if there's no manager there at the minute, it just needs a lift. And I think it's not rocket science to say that getting the local community, getting local boys involved can give you that foundation and can give you that platform that, you know, maybe you have to stabilise this year and kick on next year, or wherever it may be. But, you know, you just want to see a hard working side leaving it out there and being organised and playing with a plan and, you know, being a threat. And as I say, I've watched the last couple of games, and to me,
so let's go hypothetically, Len. You make a call. There is a job there, and you know, and who knows? To say, well, no one knows. It's all hypothetical. You know, how does Christian Wheeler put a team out? And what does Christian Wheeler do to turn stuff around?
I'll probably get a divorce. I actually mentioned it to my wife last night, and she kind of grinned. Just said, "You've probably been out football, you know, for too long. It's probably about time you started doing something." I mean, not travelling and COVID has given me that time to watch games, and you know, what is a good friend of mine, and I'll go and sit at Walden on a Tuesday night and sit in the stand and make notes and give them to me at half time. It's kind of given me back that little bit. But as I say, my plan would be, I've got 4 or 5 people that live in Harlow that would be my backroom team, a physio, and then I would make those calls to, first of all, if the budget's tight, you need to areas where you cut your cloth accordingly. So my relationship at Southend, I would go to Southend. Obviously, their head of youth lives in Harlow. I would get a couple of loans from them. I would be straight onto the phone to Ross at Orient. I'd get a couple of loans there. I'd get on the phone to my mate who lives around the corner, Danny Scopes, who manages Concord. They've sent 2 or 3 boys out in Ryman North this week. Get him to pull them back and get him to Harlow. And then, as I say, I've in the last 48 hours, I've compiled a list of maybe 25, 30 players that live in the town that give you a chance from a budget perspective and that local passion and input and wanting to do well in the place that you live. And then, you know, if the budget is tight, we've also compiled a list of about 25, 30 people that are playing in the Essex Senior League that probably can make that step up. And then you build your team to give you a chance, you know, and a lot of those ethos comes from Tom. Back in the day, there's a lot of things that Tom taught me around setting your team up, about being disciplined, about, you know, the importance of set pieces in both boxes, and I would also, probably not what they want to hear, is I've got a fitness coach in Harlow as well that would get them as fit as possible to give them the best of chance. Because I think at the moment, if I look, even looking last night, if you look at some of the results across the leagues at the minute, they're very scattergun.
Yeah, you know, really weird.
They're very weird, and even the Premier League's a prime example of that. And I don't know whether teams are as fit as they should be, or there's an enforced layoff has harmed people maybe. But if you're fit, if you're strong, if you've got a baseline to work off, might not like everyone at the start, but if you're pretty direct and you get it forward and get it in the box and you create chances, you also create a bit of excitement, and at that level as well. If you keep putting it in the right area time after time, unfortunately the players at that level might be working all day on a building site, they might be tired, they're going to give you a chance. So you got to build a team and give yourself a platform to give you a chance. And also,
well, sorry about that, everybody. We just had a major power surge, so everything sort of just cut out. So I'm having to go on a webcam at the moment because the laptop camera's gone down as well. So apologies to Christian and to everybody else. So, but we'll carry on. I forgot exactly where we were now. But we was talking about what you would do if you was put in at Harlow.
Yeah, as I say, I think I've touched on it, but I just think you need to create that connection to the team, and you need to create something that the fans can buy into, and a lot of that just, as I say, a lot of that just comes down to leaving it all out there. And as I say, if you give yourself a platform to work off, you're organised, you're fit and strong. I think the games that I've watched, that gives you a chance.
Yeah.
So, as I say, I don't know what's going on, but it just seemed to me that it sort of reignited something in me that I thought, it just made me start thinking about it. And I've been to the last couple of games, as I say, and obviously the manager hasn't been there, and I started to think about it more. And as I say, I spent a lot of time at home, and drew up a plan, and I thought, let's see what happens tomorrow night. Obviously lost last night again, so I thought, I might have got a message Tom today. See what happens.
Mm.
But as I say, as we touched on earlier, there's loads of managers out there that are not working at the minute, and no one would look at Harlow, regardless if you had a big budget, small budget, whatever. No one's going to look at Harlow and think, I don't really fancy that. The facilities are there, the fans are there. If you give them something to shout about, and it's a big club. It's a big club that's probably underachieving,
Mm. It just seems weird how that, why that is. Can you put a finger on why that is? Because it seems to have been like that, maybe for some time.
I don't know. There is an expectation there. I would say there's an expectation there. I think there's probably an expectation now that why some of these players paying for us and we haven't got the likes of Junior back, or Reed back, or players of that ilk.
Mm.
Obviously the budget's changed. Obviously COVID has probably affected Harlow's earnings. Actually I really thought of Harlow the other week when I come to the game, and obviously all the what's it called, not the shed. I think Tom would lynch me for calling it the shed. The marquee.
Yeah.
The marquee was shut, and obviously there's lots of earnings there, and obviously you have to cut off accordingly. But yeah, it's a tough time for football, and I think you're going to need to do all you can to put a team out there, and that means obviously using your contacts well, and obviously then urging people to come and part with their money. And what I've seen the last couple of weeks, there's no lack of that. People are still turning up, but it's giving them something to come back the next week. And if you're leaving it all out there and you've got local boys involved, you've got a chance, I think.
Definitely.
Because it is a big club. It's a big club, and it's got great support. It's just, I don't know. It's just, as I say, it's always been, even back in the day. You look at Harlow doing well, and then they went out of the league because of financial irregularities, and then they had a couple of promotions, and then you had the power struggles and people left, and it's kind of like bit of a soap opera, really. It's a bit like Orient. Like, there's never a quiet moment. It's, you know, up or down. You're either quite good or quite bad. You know, there's not like there's no real medium. But as I say, there's plenty of managers out of work that would look at Harlow and, you know, snap your arm off. But then again, can you think out of the box? If the budget's tight, you know, what's your contact book like locally to get some sponsors in? Sponsor a centre forward, sponsor his goal bonus, sponsor you know, you got to think, as I say, outside the box, and that's just my thoughts about it. You know, as I say, you can tell I've sat down for a couple of days and thought about it and spoke to a few people that you know would help and are around football, and we'll see if he picks up the phone. He might be in Spain on his sunbed and tell me to F off.
Well, listen,
I don't know where he is. He always liked the sound. I actually see him a couple of one of the last times I see him. I see him a couple of years ago at the airport. I was with my family and we was running to the gate, and I think he was at Stansted. We was going to Spain actually, my parents, and he was with his mates on a golfing trip back out to Spain. But yeah, he's a good man, Tom. As I say, he's passionate. He's opinionated, and you know, he might rub someone up the wrong way at times, but you know, I think that there's probably been plenty of instances in the past where I've rubbed people up the wrong way at football, and I'm definitely not the same person outside of football than maybe I am at football. And you know, I think there's a lot more, you know, Harlow should be thankful for Tom than, you know, there's a negative, you know. I think that's the best way to think about Tom, that he's given a lot more to Harlow than he's taken back. You know, as I say, you wouldn't buy a non-league club or a lower league, you know, football club if you wanted to earn money or you wanted to improve your health, you know, or your hairline or anything like that. It's not going to do you any favours, you know. You're doing it because you love it, you know. I mean, my pals always used to joke back in the day, you know, you win the lottery, you inspire Harlow, and you know that's what most people that are attached to football do. You know, you're doing it because you know you love it, or that, you know, you've got that affiliation to it.
Well, listen, Christian, I really appreciate you being with us today. It's been really a really fantastic chat. I must admit, I've enjoyed every single minute of it, and but I really do appreciate your passion for the club and all the rest of it, and hopefully, you know, if for your sake, that something may come of it. You know, maybe even as later on as tonight. Who knows? But who knows?
Let's see what happens. But either way, you know, it's a great club. It gave me a lot of great memories playing for the Sports Centre, and on with the first team. You know, as a local lad, if you can't, you know, if you don't churn out years of being a professional footballer, you normally want to play for your hometown team, and I've done that. And you know, my son's got, you know, Harlow. We don't live in the town anymore, but you know, my son's got that affiliation with Harlow. And if it's at Orient off, he'll always want to go and watch Harlow. So whatever happens, I just want to see a good, successful Harlow team playing with the supporters enjoying themselves, because you know that's what, you know, Harlow's probably the sort of epitomises what's good about non-league. And I think when they're winning and things are good, you know, that's what you really want to see. So thanks for your time, mate.
No worries.
Talk football.
No problems at all. And say, stay on, and we'll have a chat off air in a sec. But a massive thank you to Christian, and of course we've got Migsy as well coming up as well in our next interview. That's going to be another good one. Of course, my colleague on the Isthmian show when we first started Isthmian show some 8 years ago. So that'll be an interesting chat with him coming up in the very near future. But from me and Christian, good night.